Live from the Export Beer Garden Studios, you're listening to the BYC, where a few weeks ago we pondered the fragility of the Black Caps batting lineup. However, after storming back in the last two T20s against the English and winning the first one-dayer in a counter, we were prepared to put our doubts to the side. Sadly, it would seem those doubts were well-founded after the boys were given an absolute shellacking in the last three one-dayers. Hardly ideal preparation as we head into the Cricket World Cup. We can take some heart from the imminent return of the Golden One, but there is much to do if we are to have any chance of competing in the upcoming global tournament. And Dylan Cleaver, disappointing.
Yeah, when you invest that sort of middle of the night time, you expect your boys to come through for you.
Totally, man.
At least once. Those last three ODIs were appalling. In fact, for every game across the T20s and the ODIs were really bad games of cricket.
Yeah. And interestingly, Paul Ford, what I found interesting about like the T20s and the one-dayers, it was like two heavyweights in the ring, and one of them would punch one of them in the head, and then the other one would punch the other one in the head, and then the other one would punch. You know, it was just like they were hidings all the games. It was bizarre series.
Yeah, it was. And, you know, I think we could maybe convince ourselves that New Zealand was keeping its cards to its chest or something, close to its chest, but such was the margin of victory. You know, the three losses were really bad. The one win was very good.
Yeah.
But jeepers, it felt like it, you know, when you get to the end of a series ahead of a World Cup, you kind of want to feel like everything's settled and everything's just ticking along nicely. Now, it's not doom and gloom, but it doesn't feel settled. It feels like that series raised more questions than answers.
Yeah. I mean, that's where I'm at. I mean, we're looking at this batting lineup, Dylan Cleaver. For me, it's the weakest lineup we've had in some time, and I really don't genuinely have a lot of confidence in it. Of course, we're going to have the return of our greatest ever. Yeah. You know, and that is, let's be really frank about it, going to be a huge bolster to the side. But, geez, there's some areas of concern there. Yeah,
weirdly, perhaps counterintuitively, I'm not as worried about the batting for that very reason you mentioned.
Yes.
Kane Williamson at 3 just completely transforms that batting lineup. It adds solidity. Conway can bat. Mitchell can bat. Mitchell did actually bat very well in this series, probably the only one to come out of it with any credit. Williamson can bat. Latham is a good one-day player who had a poor series.
Yes.
I'm probably not that bothered by the batting. I'm a little more worried about some of the things we saw in the bowling and just, I mean, England they are different gravy, right? They are slightly different to other teams you're going to see at this World Cup, but just the complete inability to stymie their run flow. And I don't know what we're doing with that second spinner. I'm really interested to get Paul's thoughts on this because it appears that New Zealand's tactic for this World Cup is to pick a whole heap of guys that can bowl a bit of spin and just throw them at the wall and hope that one of them, along with Mitchell Santner, is going to come off.
Just before you answer that question regarding the spinners there, Paul Ford, my concern, though, and, you know, we talk about the return of Williamson, we can't be in a situation where we're massively loading up on this guy who hasn't had any cricket and expect him to solve all of our problems. He obviously brings an immense amount of experience and so forth and is one of the greatest batsmen in the world. But, geez, we don't want to put him under too much pressure straight away.
No, that's right. I mean, of course, he hasn't played cricket for, you know, months and months and months. And bloody difficult to come back in and just be in red-hot form, carrying, as you say, the entire batting order on his back, which of course, he's up for. But it seems a little bit unrealistic to me. So, yeah, I think that job is really going to fall to the likes of Mitchell and Conway. And, look, I think Phillips is really important. I think that Phillips is going to be if he can get going, I think that will take a hell of a lot of pressure off Williamson returning.
I guess too, when you think about it in terms of the batting, Dylan, there is some solidity there in your Mitchells, your Conways, your Williamsons, your Lathams, and then you've got your dashes like Phillips.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So I guess there is some reason for optimism, and let's be frank, it's very different playing a tournament like this, you know, a one-off series against a particular side, a World Cup tournament is very much a different kind of beast. Anything can happen.
Yeah, and look, I'm quite confident with, like, sometimes when you go to India, you can be freaked out by conditions. I don't think conditions are going to be like you might get in a bilateral series. And Conway scored runs in India. Williamson scored lots of runs in India. Like, it's not going to be... Yeah, I'm relatively relaxed about it. But there's this weird thing with the squad that I don't know if we did address last time around, and it's just a real lack of one-day cricket over the last 4 years. And I've got some numbers here, and Ish Sodhi has played 15 ODIs since the 2019 World Cup. Will Young's played 19 ODIs total. Daryl Mitchell, who's a stalwart now, has played 29 ODIs. If you go on the Shane Bond theory that you don't know how to play one-day international cricket till you play 30, he's still a novice.
Well, what does Shane Bond know, though? Come on. No.
Exactly. Rachin Ravindra has played 9 ODIs total. Jimmy Neesham has played 14 ODIs since the 2019 World Cup. And in those 14 ODIs, he hasn't passed 36. Chapman's played 12 ODIs total. Phillips has played 20 ODIs total. And someone whose spelling I can't recognise, Conway, 22 ODIs total. And Williamson hasn't played he's played 12 ODIs since 2019.
That is really interesting, Dylan. And the other thing about that is that lots of those guys won't have actually played any 50-over cricket domestically either. They're playing test matches, they're playing a smattering of ODIs, and then they're just playing, an absolute smorgasbord of T20. So it's a really interesting point.
And there's a rhythm to one-day cricket that is not easily learned like T20. It's not just go out there and balls to the wall. So I think Paul or yourself made the very good point last week that perhaps Finn Allen's weakness is that he doesn't recognise that in one-day cricket, a 60 made off 70 balls is far more valuable than a 30 made off 20. Which is like the opposite in T20. So, yeah, on the one hand, I think definitely got the batting to do it and to be successful in India. On the other hand, I'm saying they just haven't had enough practice playing 50-over cricket.
Yeah. On the batting, just sticking with the batting for a second, Paul Ford, who's opening?
I think it'll be Young and Conway. That's where I think they're heading.
Yes.
I think
because I floated a rumour with you fellas, and I don't know if you brought it up last week.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, look, I ruled it out completely when you said it because and it was about Mark Chapman opening, and I think Mark Chapman has never opened for in 50-over cricket basically, and or T20s for New Zealand. So what an absolute wild card that would be. And I said, Jase, it's one of the stupidest things I've heard. He's not even over there playing in the one-dayers. It's one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. And then he got named in the squad, and there you pop back up.
Yeah. Well, no, and you make a really fair point. I like it. I think. Well, we know he's a bit of a dasher.
Yeah.
For sure, but he's also got a very solid and compact kind of technique. And you mentioned in our chat earlier, Paul Ford, about Nichols, of course, pretty good record opening. Who else? Finn Allen, not so good. Will Young, not great. Oh, well, reasonable actually, to be fair.
He's got a good one-day record. Most of the runs against Netherlands, it has to be said.
Yeah, I'm for it. I'm calling it now. Chapman and Conway to open.
I don't hate it, but that's faint praise, isn't it? But it just doesn't feel Gary Stead to me. It just doesn't feel like a Stead thing to do.
Right.
And I think that's the thing that I grapple with. That said, a one-off game, which is what this first World Cup game really is, right, against England, throw some stuff at the wall and see what sticks before we have sort of a trio of reasonably easy games, relatively. Look, it's not crazy. I think, though, that they're going to try and get Will Young going. And he keeps looking good, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Young.
Yeah.
And he keeps not delivering. And it's just that run production. But, look at what he did in England. 6 bats at Will Young, average of 23.2 across the series, both series, at a strike rate of 83. He looks good, but suboptimal in terms of the run count.
Yeah, it's just that consistency of selection that has always been his bugbear, really, in terms of giving him a really long, just saying to Will Young, you're in the side for some time, fill your boots, son.
Yeah, and my question about Mark Chapman was, what suggests to you that would be better?
I just think, Phineas Slog, he's got some qualities, but he's just too hit and miss.
Yeah, well, he's not in the squad.
There, I know. And so my reasoning behind Chapman is that actually he's not so hit and miss, that he has a good batting technique, that he has the tools to open, and also has the ability to slap it around as well. So I don't know. I think it's potentially a good option. But let's get into the bowling, because I know that's your chief concern. Obviously a big blow, the sexy Camel.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if he's ruled out, who do they replace him with? Who's the closest like for like? Or would they go for like? Or will they pick another bloody part-time spinner slash batter?
I would have thought they'd go Jamieson. That would be sort of who I think they'll pick. But,
yes. In that scenario, I would go Jamieson. Even though, in Indian conditions, he hasn't done great.
Yeah, and he's not quite like for like. But, yeah, I think that's probably who they would go for it. They'd probably go Jamieson ahead of Tickner. And, again, Tickner's not a perfect like for like either. Tim Southee, right arm outswing, classic, medium pace.
Hard to clone.
Yeah.
Hey, now listen, I want to respond to allegations that I was behind the injury to Tim Southee in order to force my guy, Benny Lister, up the Cricket World Cup pecking order. Now, I want to address that head on. Now, look, I back Benny Lister purely on his domestic form. He was a big, burly left armer. He hooped the ball around, powerful guy, got good bounce, and I thought he had a lot of potential. I don't think he's delivered yet internationally. His first game, his debut, I think, was against Pakistan at Eden Park, and I felt he looked nervous and he was just putting the ball in the pitch. He wasn't steaming in. And at the moment, I don't... he's got some wickets, though, but I don't think he's fully backing himself or believes in himself. So on that front, I would not be picking him in the Cricket World Cup. All right?
I think he might have a hammy too.
Right. And we're going to talk about like stuff that went awry, and the series is one thing, but what an absolute galaxy of injuries we've got.
Yes.
Southee, of course, you've mentioned. Mitchell had a dislocated finger, but I think he's okay. Finn Allen, if we lose a batsman, he dislocated his little finger. Phillips has had a hand injury, but he seems to be fine. Lister's got the hammy. Milne's out with a hammy. Shipley, who is another one that could be a contender to head over to replace Southee, he's out with a back injury. It's quite a staggering injury count for the Black Caps.
I knew I missed something. Milne is the one I'd like them to take if Southee can't go.
Well, he's out with a blown hammy, isn't he? So
yeah, but you could give him a bit more time. I think they were wary of picking him, weren't they? Because he wasn't quite ready.
It's an interesting thing, and I heard Steve Harmison talking about Jofra Archer and taking guys over. It's a 7-week tournament. It's unfathomably long. But you've got these guys with dodgy backs flying around in domestic airlines in India for weeks and weeks and weeks, trying to sort of nurse their backs. It's quite a tricky thing. To your point, though, he also reckons squads are generally going to probably use 17, 18, 19, even up to 20 players, because guys are just going to get injured over the 7 weeks. So they should all be ready.
Can I just throw it out there? Can they just harden up a bit? Torn this, broken
filled.
this. Yeah, concrete. A spoonful of concrete, Paul Ford. Come on, man. You're representing your country. Get fired up. I don't care if you've got a few broken bones and a ripped muscle. Put it aside.
God, it's great
Grab
to have
that silver fern and just get stuck into it.
Great to have Steve Chew on the podcast today, isn't it? It's awesome.
Yeah. Just speaking of England, of course, they got rid of Jason Roy, and they brought in Harry Brook. Yeah. No surprises there. And as I've stated ad nauseum, the fact that was even an issue was beyond my comprehension.
Although he batted pop in that series.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it must have been a line ball call, I reckon. And I think Jason Roy's talking about, perhaps international retirement now.
Well, and he's turned down a central contract already, Jason Roy, and I think he was thinking this would be his swan song. Terrible timing to get out with an injured back. I think what's happened is that David Milan was in their sort of early named squad, as cover for the middle order or top and middle order. And then he just had a barnstorming series against New Zealand and has forced his way into their first 11. So they reckon, at least for that first game against New Zealand, Harry Brook will not make their 11, because basically you're picking Harry Brook or Ben Stokes. You got to pick one or t'other. So, after Stokes scored 8 million runs off 120 balls against us, you'd expect that he'll probably be quite hard to drop.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in that sort of selection conundrum, you don't want to be Harry Brook, really. Up against Stokesy.
No.
No chance.
But before we move on to Whitby, I'm desperate for an answer here. Who is New Zealand's second spinner? Who is the guy? Like, Mitchell Santner's going to bowl as 10.
Yep.
You need a quality second spinner. Ratchet Ravindra got wickets actually in England, but it'd be a stretch to say he bowled well. There was
12 wickets in 7 games he got. Absolute golden arm for sure.
Yeah. So who is it?
Yeah.
I think it's Ish Sodhi myself, but yeah. I feel like Ravindra has done himself a lot of favours. Even the 61 or whatever it was off 40 odd balls in that last one day. Handy runs down the order, But Ish Sodhi he was good in England. He did some good things, and so I think it would be unfair for him to have sort of gone past him in the pecking order. I was just having a look here. Ish Sodhi, 5 matches, 11 wickets at an average of 13 and RPO of 8. That's pretty decent. So I think it's Sodhi's position to start with at least.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And you don't want to get into this situation, which is what I was kind of feeling about this New Zealand side of itsy-bitsy kind of people, like you say, Dylan, throwing everything against the wall. And, you've got to pick specialists. You've got to pick, people that are spinners out and out rather than sort of part-timers and all that sort of carry on. But I'm with Paul on that. You've got to go Sodhi. And, he's got the experience as well. And he tends to do pretty well in tournaments.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good bowler, but he's a better bowler when batters are coming at him hard in T20s and he can throw in all his variations and mix it up. This Bangladesh series, which we're going to talk about later, but it'll be very important for guys like Sodhi and Ratchet Ravindra to get into some sort of rhythm, although it sounds funny talking about limited overs cricket in this way, but to bowl longer spells.
Yeah, and they're obviously wanting to give Ashok a bit of time, to develop and stuff, even though, I think he's a fantastic bowler. But I take the point that you made a few podcasts ago, I think it was, Dylan, about wanting to see him bowl Test cricket. And I think that's a really sound philosophy with someone like Ashok, because he's got some qualities and he can certainly turn the ball. And rather than put him into the slap dash and get smashed around a bit, maybe lose confidence, get him in the Test match format, I say. Hey, now, speaking of this English series, we've got a little message from Whitby, fish and chips from Whitby, our old mate Tony Blaney, and he says, hello, September 23rd. September 23, not the 23rd. I was going to say, that's not right, it's the 20th. The Black Caps white ball series against England left me somehow unsatisfied, even though it was 2-1 going into the last. The game seemed short of a little oomph somehow. Not surprising, I suppose, given that each team either lost big or won big each time. There were plenty of sixes hit every match, but the whole thing was bereft of drama, with nary a tight finish in sight. I suppose we should be semi-pleased that we competed half the time against a pretty crash-hot England side, but it certainly doesn't leave you being overly optimistic about our chances at the World Cup. That having been said, tournaments are a strange animal, and you never say never once the wheels on the bus start going around and around. Anywho, chaps, sorry it's been so long between drinks. I've been enjoying the summer and even finished the season with a little flourish for the Yorkshire over 60s team, which was a nice way to sign off from my last season of competitive cricket. Take care, lads, and run the first one hard. Love from Blaney. I'd love to know what he got.
Yeah.
I tried to find that. I've just been, because the message came through last night and I've been digging through the Yorkshire over 60s cricket card, so I'll be in touch on that, Jace. Don't you worry. Yeah. I'm on the case. In terms of that World Cup, though, I just had a really quick look. India are the favourites. They're paying $3. England, $4. Australia, $5. And Pakistan, $6.50, but I did just see that Naseem Shah has been ruled out with an injury. So injuries are going to take a massive toll on every team in this tournament over the next couple of months.
Oh, guaranteed those dirty, filthy, cheating Australians will win. Always bloody win that stuff.
And you're at home.
Hey, now let's move on to the Bangladesh series. Woo! Excitement City. I don't even think it's being televised anywhere.
It's not.
So,
What?
3 games.
Is it not even free on YouTube? Come on.
No.
Surely.
Incidentally, by the way, fellas, did you catch much of the New Zealand A, Australia A?
A little bit.
Yeah. There's some interesting stuff happening there, which we'll talk about in another podcast maybe. But Bangladesh 3-1-dayers, I guess an opportunity, Dylan Cleaver, for us to tutu a bit, have a bit of a play with the side maybe, or do we try and settle on our first 11 and just get them some match practice?
Well, we can't.
I suppose we can't.
There's only 5 of the actual World Cup squad going. So, I mean, it is important.
Yes, of course.
It is important for some players. Will Young, as Paul mentioned, looks great, but it's just not delivering the big scores that talent and that technique look like they should. So he needs some runs at the top of the order. Rachin Ravindra and Ish Sodhi need to bowl a lot of overs. Chapman. Is Chapman on this tour, actually? Jeepers, I'm trying to think.
No,
he's not.
He'll be on baby duty, actually.
Yes,
Chapman.
I think.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
He's not having a baby, though, Jason, I don't think.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Yeah, he's obviously not giving birth, but yeah.
And Trent Bolt, actually.
Bolty.
Yeah. So I reckon this is a penance. I reckon they said, yeah, okay, Trent, we're going to let you come back. We know you're not part of the contract scene now. We're going to let you come back, and you are going to play the World Cup, but you're also going to
Bangladesh.
Going to Bangladesh.
Yes.
And there is a bit of a duel there, right? So if Southie's out, which it looks like, we've got Jamieson, Milne, Tickner all competing for that Southie spot that we talked about earlier. And, Lockie Ferguson is the captain, so, he's going to be playing all of those games. So, I think Lockie will be looking for a few more wickets, to be honest.
Oh man, he needs some.
But yeah, those other 3, I think they're in a bit of a 3-way race to join that World Cup squad. So it could be a bit of heat from those 3 guys, Tickner, Milne, and Jamieson.
Answer this question for me, Dylan Cleaver. Is this series helpful or an annoyance to the side?
Well, I think they've probably indicated its annoyance by picking 10 players that won't be going on to India, unless, as Paul mentions, injuries play a part. It reminds me a little bit of a weird little bilateral T20 series they played before the T20 Worlds in the United Arab Emirates, where we went over to Bangladesh and played 3 T20s on some of the worst wickets that have ever been prepared for the shortest format, and it was just a confidence destroyer. I think New Zealand might have been out for 60 odd in one of them. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if we see it turning square from ball 1.
Yes.
Here as well.
Well, it's notorious over there, isn't it? I mean, they're actually really hard to beat in home conditions.
Yeah, they are. And they're playing a decent squad, I think, for the first 2 ODIs, and then maybe resting all their best players for the 3rd one. Look, I mean, it's cricket. It's content.
Is it though?
I want to see how Dean Foxcroft goes. I mean, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I'll be gutted that I can't watch Mushfiqur Rahim, Mehdi Hassan Miraz, Taskin Ahmed, Hassan Mahmood, and Sharaful Islam, because those guys haven't been picked, Jace. That's really heartbreaking for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is Ebadot Hussain playing? I think he might be injured, actually.
He's out injured. One of the interesting selections for Bangladesh to keep an eye on is Tamim Iqbal, who announced his retirement from all international cricket in July, and then took a phone call from the Bangladesh Prime Minister in August, and he's back.
Right. Are you suggesting there's some sort of correlation there going on, Paul Ford?
There might have been a check exchanged.
I'm not sure. I think there's something. It's quite an unusual situation. I just wondered if would Chris Hipkins ring Kane Williamson if he decided not to play the Cricket World Cup? I bloody hope he would, but I'm not sure that he would.
And aren't they picking someone, or they pick someone whose social media feed has been trawled through and he's shown to have put some very ultra-orthodox conservative Muslim views in posts around women needing to wear burqas, and if your wife goes off to a university, it's just a terrible state of affairs because she's never going to be the demure mother that you need.
Oh dear.
Yeah, he's in there too. Yeah, for sure. So hopefully he gets absolutely pumped during the series.
Hey, the Asia Cup, Sri Lanka bowled out for 50 by India, Paul Ford.
Oh, what an absolute flippin' hiding this was. Incredible, really. What was amazing, though, so yeah, Mohammad Siraj got 6 wickets. Hardik Pandya got 3 for 3. I mean, it was an absolute drubbing. But from, I saw the crowd, and it was unbelievable crowd. Like, not a Warriors crowd, but not far off it. Like
it was the final, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the final. Absolutely unbelievable. Sri Lankans just going sort of mad for cricket. Of course, they're in a sort of apocalyptic economic crisis over there. And I saw a couple of really lovely pieces where they just talked about cricket, fans in the stands talking about cricket being the balm for the nation. And I thought that was lovely. Yeah. So they just love cricket.
Like the All Blacks used to be for us.
Yeah.
We won't go there. It's time for Paul Ford's News or Ruse.
Yeah, it is 3 bits of news out this week. Tell me what's wrong with one of them. Number one, former New Zealand cricket CEO David White has been appointed CEO of the DP World ILT20 in Dubai. He resigned from New Zealand cricket in August after 12 years in charge, being invited to help build a successful and sustainable league that will play an important role in the development of UAE players and the promotion of cricket in the UAE and the Middle East is a great honour, White said blandly in a bland media release. The second edition of the competition starts in January, and Stuff reckons Lovely Trenti, Dead Shark Eyes, Martin Guptill, The Stance, Colin Burt, Matt Rowe will all be there, along with Davey Dum Dum, Shaheen Shah Afridi and Sam Billings. It remains to be seen whether White's son Ollie will rejoin the Dubai Capitals squad after his selection bolt from the Blue in the inaugural season. Number 2, Sport Ireland has contacted Cricket Ireland to discuss some reasonably hairy sponsorship agreements after complaints from fans about advertisements visible at recent cricket matches between Ireland and India in Dublin. The ads are for gambling companies accused of taking bets on children's sport and promoting content of a sexual nature. Sport Ireland received complaints about a number of gambling companies which had branding visible on advertising hoardings, the boundary rope, and TV coverage. Cricket Ireland apologised unreservedly for any offence inadvertently caused. One of the companies that had branding at the ground, 1xBet, was suspended by the UK Gambling Commission in 2019 after a Sunday Times investigation said it promoted a Pornhub casino which enticed gamblers in with completely naked croupiers. The site was also taking bets, as I said, on children's sports and cockfighting. Amazing.
I beg your pardon?
Was that cockfighting part of the Pornhub thing?
Yeah,
or are we talking about...
Are they interrelated there?
Hey, look, I don't know. I can't Google it, but I will be straight after this. Number 3, with excitement building up for the 2023 ODI World Cup in India, cricket fans have started to look for innovative ways to catch the India-Pakistan World Cup showdown at Ahmedabad on October 15. This is sensational. Because hotel rates in the city have hit a record high, fans are now making their way to hospital rooms. Prices of hotel rooms in Ahmedabad have gone up by more than 20 times. We're talking $1,200 to $1,500 New Zealand dollars on match day. Dr. Paras Shah, who works at a hospital in the city, said that people are asking for full-body checkups and overnight stays at hospitals in Ahmedabad to save money on lodging and to get their health checked. Fans are willing to stay in any room in the hospital to watch the India versus Pakistan match. This is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. But it's a news or ruse. So there you go.
What?
Yeah, you're up.
Oh.
Reigning champion is Jason Hoyte, I believe.
Oh, no, I was just trying to think about the location of the third story there, Ahmedabad. That's what I'm going with. It's not there. I don't know, but it's not there.
Okay, I'll go for the second story that wasn't India.
It's so annoying when Dylan Cleaver just flippantly just throws something in there and then gets the trophy back. That's so disappointing.
Oh, what?
It was the right story, the wrong reason. The croupiers weren't completely naked at the Pornhub casino, just topless. So
okay,
I know I meant to do cricket related, but I went for something.
I mean, come on, jeez. Hey, let us know about the cockfighting the next podcast there. I'd like some clarification on that, Paul Ford.
Still point of order raised. I will address that.
Thank you. It's time now for Cricket Violence Corner.
Paul Ford's Cricket Violence Corner.
Former Australian cricket star and long-time bench warmer named after a cricket ground has now been charged in relation to his alleged involvement in a commercial-scale drug supply plot. Chubby hospitality operator Stuart Charles Glyndur McGill was arrested by Sydney police resplendent in their 1980s moustaches on Tuesday. After a 2-year probe, police have charged McGill with taking part in the supply of what is rumoured to be about $300,000 worth of blow, bump, dust flake, nose candy, snow, speedball, toot, white rock, if you know what I mean. The police investigation was sparked after McGill was allegedly abducted and beaten in 2021. He made global headlines after telling police he was confronted, forced into a car, driven to a remote site on Sydney's outskirts, assaulted, threatened at gunpoint before being driven to a third location and released. Despite the potential for things to go full reservoir dogs that day, McGill only sustained minor injuries and did not require medical care. Always seemed a bit fishy. Will be interesting to see this one get trawled through the courts over the next months and years.
Yes, indeed. Fascinating stuff. Great stuff, Paul Ford. Well, that brings us to the end of the podcast. How's the bounce going, Dylan Cleaver? You must be a very busy man.
I'm very tired, man.
Yeah.
So, those late nights. Thankfully, the Rugby World Cup at this stage is still all crammed into weekends. So,
Yeah.
So I'm getting a bit of relief during the week. But no, it's going great. DylanCleaver.substack.com or Google Dylan Cleaver and the bounce. I had stacks of new registrations, actually.
Great.
In the past month or so. So that's fantastic. So thanks to all those who have signed up, and more the merrier.
Great stuff. Paul Ford, if people want to get in contact with us, mate, what are they doing?
Yes, if you've got allegations to make against Jason Hoyte, please slide into the DMs of the Alternative Commentary Collective or the Beige Brigade on Facebook or the Gram, or flick us through an email to byc@beigebrigade.co.nz.
Hey, and before we go, I know this is a cricket podcast, but I'm just going to put it out there now. If you had to pick one, Warriors to win the NRL or the All Blacks to win the World Cup,
Yes.
what are you going for? I know I'm going Warriors all the way.
I think the Warriors are more likely, so I'm going to hitch my wagon there.
ABs. Because it's the foundation of our country, and I am disgusted with both of you.
So on brand with you today, Steve.
So jumping on the bandwagon of the Wars. Come on now. Oh, just what a disappointing way to end the podcast.
Up the ABs just doesn't sound right, though, does it?
But hopefully we thrash Bangladesh in these 3 1-days and all will be right.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Hey, thanks for taking the time to listen to the podcast. We'll be back same time, same place next week. You take care out there.